Buddy, welcome back to Service and Sacrifice. This is Justin, and today I have Marine veteran Dom with me. Dom, you want to give a quick intro?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I appreciate you having me on, Justin. Like you mentioned, I'm a 12-year Marine Corps veteran. I served from 2010 to 2022. I did admin. I've deployed. I've been a recruiter in the Marine Corps, and yeah, I mean, I loved my service, but eventually, I just kind of got tired and tapped out. Which a lot of people look at me wild when I say I got out after 12 years, and I was on track with promotions and whatnot, but hey, when you know it's your time to go, you know it's your time to go. So, yeah, happy to be on and talk about whatever you got for me.
I just want to bring something up before I forget it because you mentioned recruiter. So
Yeah.
I talked about this on a previous video, but the first time I went to a recruiter, I went to a Marine recruiter, and it was in like one of those buildings where they had the Marines, Air Force, and then Army, right? And like I don't know if the Air Force moved their location, but it was like permanently closed, which is kind of funny. Like, because like all branches make fun of each other, and the Air Force team
Yeah.
wasn't even there. So I went to the Marine recruiter because I saw my buddy on Facebook was in the Marines, and I was like, that looks cool. Like I'll go see about it. And the Marine recruiters are in their dress uniforms, right? So they're looking all sharp. And so I went in there, and the guy was like, like, how can I help you? And I was like, I want to be infantry. Like, sign me up. Let's go. How quick can I get out? And he was like, well, we're a really small branch, so like we can get you out in 12 months to boot camp. And I was like, dude, 12 months. Like at 19, I wasn't even sure if I still wanted to do this in 12 months. Like I just needed something. I just needed to like go, right, and do something. I don't know. I want you to give me your experience as a recruiter in this. But I felt like I don't want to say he was a bad salesman, right? But he had trouble selling me because I didn't understand like the Marine Corps like logic. I basically told him like, convince me why I should go with the
Mhm.
Marines. And all he said was, well, when you get out, you'll always be a Marine. And like to you guys, like I get it now, right? But as a 19-year-old kid, I was like, you're not selling. So like why do you think, should he have taken a different avenue? Did he expect me to understand that? Like what?
Yeah, I got you. I got you. So let me start off with like my own experience of walking into a recruiter, right? I'm gonna give you the full picture. So I was, in high school, I was kind of like the short, fat kid. Well, short in my opinion, I'm like 5'11", but I was like 260 pounds. I didn't have any muscle or anything like that, so I was just fat. And I decided, after my junior year of football. I didn't have the season that I thought I should have had, and I joined the wrestling team after football, which the wrestling team might as well have been considered the cross country team. And so by the time I had finished football, I had dropped to like 250, but they wanted me to wrestle at 215. And I was like, well, I'll give it a shot. But I mean, I've been at least 250 for as long as I can remember. And sure enough, I dropped the weight fast, really fast. I had never did any sort of cardio, anything like that, like I did with wrestling. So I dropped down to like 210 pounds. I wrestle. I wasn't very good or anything like that, but now we're coming back to football season. Put weight back on because I'm a defensive tackle. So I get back up to like 225. I had been lifting, and at this point, I'm running all the time. Football season ends, come back to wrestling. Now they want me to wrestle at 189 pounds. So I was like, yep, let's do it. And at this point, I've got some muscle on my body. I'm more fit. I was like, cool, have a good wrestling season. And I was like, all right, well, none of these scholarship letters came in the mail. I guess I'm not going to go to college. And my dad was real quick, like, well, you're either going to go to college, you're going to get a job, or you're going to get the hell out of my house. And I was like, all right. I go to school. I talked to my friend, and my friend had always talked about going into the Army for as long as I could remember. And he was like, let's go and talk to the Army recruiter. I was like, all right. So I'm wearing like my high school wrestling hoodie. It's got my name on the back and everything. And I walk in, and with my friend, and it's probably like 7 o'clock in the evening, and we walk into the Army recruiter. It's kind of like you mentioned before, where it's like all the services are in the same building, and there's just one Army dude in there, and he's just sitting down. He spins around in his chair, and he was like, hey, how can I help you? And we're like, well, we have a little bit of interest in the Army. We're wondering if you could tell us something about it. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. What questions do you have? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I thought you were going to tell me. Like, I don't know what to ask. What's boot camp like? You know, do you get paid? How often do you deploy? Basic questions. You know, I was not prepared to go in there and whatever. He answers the questions, didn't really give me any additional information, but just like you mentioned, he didn't really show any interest like in me joining, and that's fine, right? Honestly, I walked out of there thinking I was probably going to do this anyway. And so I'm leaving. I go to school the next morning. The Marine recruiter comes walking into my school, which I already had all my credits. So one of my classes was to sit like pretty much be like a greeter. Like I worked in the office, but essentially anybody who walks into the school, I direct them to the office. And it was the Marine recruiter walks in and he was like, "Hey, you were that guy that was at talking to the Army yesterday, right?" I was like, yeah, that was me. And he was like, "What are you talking to those douchebags for?" And right away, I was like, okay, I kind of like this guy. I was like, I don't know. I was just kind of thinking about doing it. He was like, "You need to come and have an appointment with me." I was like, okay. And he was like, "No, for real, like you gonna come and have an appointment with me?" I was like, "Yeah, like I just said I would." You know, I was just a young, cocky kid. And he's like, "All right, today after school, whatever." Walk into his office and pretty much like he did the opposite of what you said the Marine recruiter did for you. Like he actually told me, like, I think he put on his recruiter hat and was like, "I need to snatch this guy from the Army." And he laid out what we call benefit tags, which is what we use in a sales presentation. And he told me how I would benefit the Marine Corps, not just what I could take from the military or the Marine Corps, but how I could help it. And me coming from like that sports background, like I still wanted to be a part of a team. And right on the spot, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And yeah, you know, I was 18 when I had that meeting and started signing paperwork right there on the spot. So I say all of that to kind of like fast forward into what your question is, which is, you know, that recruiter probably already had his numbers that he needed realistically. He probably had, we have what's called a 30, 60, 90-day shipping window, and that window needs to be solidified. So if you're coming into your days of that person going to boot camp, if that's not solidified, all hell's going to break loose from our command upstairs, right? So his 90-day window is probably solidified and he's probably already got pushing 120 days on out, right? So it was probably something like that, or the recruiter was probably about to end their 36-month tour as a recruiter and just didn't care. There's a few different scenarios that probably could have played out, but we are taught as recruiters to one, screen visually right away. So does this guy look like he could step on a scale and make it? Does he look physically fit? He or she. And then we start asking some basic screening questions. If you're not disqualified off of those basic screening questions, we're going to put you on the enlistment screening test to see if you can pass the ASVAB. And then we should give you a full sales presentation, which include those benefit tags I had mentioned. And the sales presentation typically is going to last at least like an hour and a half, right? And any doubts that you have, like my job as a recruiter is to eliminate those doubts and make you know that the Marine Corps is the option for you. So whether I think you could make it as a Marine or not, as long as you're mentally, physically, and morally qualified, my job is to make sure that I enlist you. So it may have just been on that recruiter, but, and yeah, the few scenarios could have been at play there. But yeah, he should have given you a full sales presentation. And if he didn't, he was probably heading back to the fleet soon and just didn't care.
Yeah, man. I mean, you sold me right there. Yeah, I don't remember him doing any of that. He made me do like one pull up. He was like, all you have to do is one to be like qualified. And I was like, okay. And then I left being kind of like, that was and I don't want to wait 12 months, which is not his fault, right? And then I immediately sent in like internet questionnaire thing to the Army one, and those dudes were like on it. They were like hyenas. And they were like, yeah, we could get you like, they were like, even with the lowest ASVAB score, we can get you like a dozen jobs and we can get you out in like 8 weeks. And I was like, cool, let's do it. I think I got a 54 on my ASVAB with zero studying, definitely bombed the entire math part. And I got a good amount of jobs. I got like Black Hawk mechanic, artillery. I think I got, I think MP was on there. But anyway, I went with artillery. But so, okay, you said you joined in 2010, right? So we know why you joined. And I know some of why you got out from your TikToks, but do you want to just give a quick brief into that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so again, I like to just reiterate when people ask me this question that I'm not like some salty veteran that just talks down on my time served or anything like that. I always like to preface with that. I'm very thankful for my career. I'm thankful for everything that the military had given to me. But yeah, I got out for reasons, right? And a lot of the reasons kind of stem towards my understanding of the promotion system. And I understand it well because I was admin in the Marine Corps, right? I literally would get inspected by the inspecting general on the promotion system. So I like to say I have a little bit more knowledge than the average Marine on how our promotions work. And typically they're supposed to be the most qualified get promoted. And it doesn't always work that way. And as I learned, as I grew in the ranks, there's a lot of things that are just outside of your control. You know, you could be the best leader that you personally could be, right? There is no such thing as a 100%, perfect leader because every single person is different. Every single person has different mentality, emotions. They respond to things differently, and you haven't met every single person out there. So there's always more to be learned as a leader. So I always try to, learn my Marines as best as possible so I can lead them effectively. And I did that pretty well in my own humble opinion, right? Got a good relationship with my past Marines. And what I learned was as hard as I was willing to push myself with my Marines, with my work, specifically with my physical fitness, instead of a lot of the leadership pushing others that were my rank, a staff non-commissioned officer, another staff non-commissioned officer, instead of pushing them to perform the way that I was performing, they oftentimes just gave me that work. Hey, staff sergeant, whoever, is kind of slacking over here. So I need you to do that for him, right? I need you to do this. I need you to do this. And that was just exhausting. And then on top of that, so I'm doing all of these things that not very many other staff sergeants in my command specifically, were doing, but they didn't see me fit to get promoted. And I bring up the piece about understanding the promotion system so well because how it works in the Marine Corps is once you hit an E5 or higher, you get a fitness report. You fill out the fitness report, and then you have a reporting senior and a reporting official, two officers that will grade you. So your RS, your reporting senior, typically is like your officer in charge. They write the report on you. Well, being in the air wing and being admin, typically the officer in charge, their first and foremost job is to be a pilot. To be the admin officer, that's like a secondary job to them. They didn't go to admin school or anything. And oftentimes, nobody wants to be the admin officer. Nobody likes to be the guy sitting behind the desk. And I get it, right? So they kind of dread coming there. And because nobody wants to do it, they oftentimes make it the most junior officer in the command. So what my command was doing was they were bringing in the junior officer who had never gave a report to my rank before. They'd never given a report to a staff sergeant. And you have to do 3 reports to have an average. So being the junior officer, they had no average. They wrote great things on me. They graded me well, but it didn't help me. And then they were rotating them every 6 months. So I couldn't even get a second report with the person to show growth. So for me, I had 6 different reports from 6 different officers that did not carry any weight. And I knew that that was going to affect me. And I brought it up to my chain of command. Well, I brought it up to my sergeant major and my XO, and they kind of just gave me like lip service, hey, it's going to be fine, blah, 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 blah. They'll talk in a circle. And next thing you know, I'm walking out of there with no resolution. And I got passed for a gunnery sergeant. And after I got passed, they're like, oh, well, that did affect him negatively, man. So the XO and the CO decided to become my RS and my RO. And the XO, he's the major in the Marine Corps. And I think he had at that time like 16 years of service, and he graded me as his #1 staff sergeant ever, which is awesome. I was very thankful for that. CO grades me as like, I think it was his #5 staff sergeant. Though that was an awesome report to have. It was nice seeing the remarks that they put on there. but it was all after I got passed. And I had been trying to bring that up to them. And my mentality was, you guys are giving me all of this extra work that no other staff sergeant has to do. I've been trying to bring this up to you. It was all too little, too late. And when I realized that my promotion was not in my own hands, there's too many variables to whoever is over me. At that point, I was like, I think that I can just do better without the constraints of being enlisted. And that's pretty much when I decided that I wanted to get out. That's the main thing that kind of led to it. There's a couple other small things, but that's the main thing. It was the promotion system. There's a lot of things I don't agree with it, and I was just kind of tired of being drug along.
Could you? I always forget. Staff sergeant's E5 in the Marines, right?
E6.
Okay, so staff is E6, gunny's E7. Would you eventually have gotten gunny, or you just like didn't want to wait?
Yeah, so how it works in the Marines is you get one look for promotion per year. So when I got passed, I instantly knew I was going to have to wait at least another year. I would have got another look. That was the only pass I ever took in my whole career. Um, and if I would have wait, I'm confident that I would have got it the very next year. But also, how it works is, excuse me, when you get promoted to a staff NCO rank, to wear that rank, you have to have a minimum of 2 years left on your contract, or you have to do an extension. So when I got passed, that instantly told me that I was going to have to do a reenlistment in order to wear the next rank that I wouldn't get until a year from now anyway. So it kind of felt like a rabbit with, like the fishing pole with a carrot dangling and just chasing the carrot. That's what I felt like. Like if I would have got promoted on that first round, I wouldn't have had to reenlist and it would still have been my option. I probably would have reenlisted, but they took the option away from me because they're constantly making you chase that carrot and it gets frustrating. So yeah, I mean, I would have seen it even if I didn't get it that very next year. I definitely would have seen it, but yeah, I think for me, I was just I felt like I took enough on the chin at that point, and I was ready to move on.
So you got out in 22, right? I mean, dude, that wasn't that long ago. I mean, you're at least in my experience, and you were in much longer. So I'm assuming for dudes who are, 5, 10, 15 years, it takes longer to acclimate, but you're still in that window from at least what I experienced where you're still adjusting. Do you feel like it's been a few years, but do you still feel like you're not fully settled into being a civilian?
Literally every single day. Every single day. It was I felt like I had at the time a very good plan to get out. It wasn't just oh, that's it, I'm getting out, or, whatever. Like, it had been something that I had contemplated for a while. And I'm also a big advocate, and I tell my Marines this, right? Like, you should strive every day to get meritoriously promoted, because if you're doing that, you're excelling at your job, you're excelling at your physical fitness, so on and so forth. If you want to stay in, the Marine Corps wouldn't have an option, right? It's going to be your option. So strive to get meritoriously promoted. While you're doing that, prepare to get out. Prepare to get out. That way, if you decide you want to get out, you have that plan. You've got, X, Y, and Z already set in place. And I thought that I had did that well. The unfortunate truth is, joining at 19 years old and getting out, and I don't even know how, like 30, getting out at 30, I hadn't experienced real adulthood in the civilian sector ever. And so there was a lot to be learned there. And even though I also thought that I had a plan, it was real quick when I realized that I got out. There was some cracks in my plans, and I had to adjust there. A lot of times, here on the civilian side, it's like, man, I could have just stayed in and did this or did that, and but then other times I'm like, well, I did get out for a reason. And, it's something that I kind of go back and forth with, honestly, every single day. I'm still very, very much so like involved with the Marine Corps. I'm a federal employee nowadays, working for the federal government. And it's nice showing up, being able to wear like civilian attire, vice the uniform. And when I come home, I'm truly home. And when I go to work, I'm at work. But yeah, I mean, trying to get out with a plan is very important, but you also got to be prepared because if you haven't been an adult in the civilian world before, there's going to be some roadblocks. You just got to be prepared to kind of like overcome those roadblocks.
So you said federal employee. So you're whenever your next 8 years is up, you're gonna get your federal pension, right?
Yeah, so to my understanding, you have to do as a civilian federal employee 30 years, not the military 20 years, right? So it wouldn't be 8 years because I have 12 years served already. So what you do is you can buy back your time served, which it depends on like how much your basic pay was when you got out. It's this whole process. But it is kind of cool because like those 12 years that I served as an active duty person, they don't go towards nothing anymore. So as a federal employee, yeah, I can buy back this time, which if you plan on working there until you retire, it makes all the sense in the world to do it, right? It's a few $1,000s. If you got out somebody like me who did 12 years, like I would have to pay back estimating probably like $6,000. But as far as the amount that it pushes me forward in my career. Now I'm sitting here as a 12-year Marine Corps veteran, and I've been a federal employee for 2 years now. So I'm already almost like halfway through my career as a federal employee. So yeah, that's a really cool benefit. It also like fast tracks, how much PTO you acquire on a pay cycle and everything like that.
Okay. I didn't ask you, where were you stationed?
Yep. Yeah. So I went to boot camp, Paris Island, which is in Beaufort, South Carolina, and then I ended up after I finished Marine combat training in my job school, I ended up getting stationed at Marine Corps Air Station Beaufort, so just down the road from Paris Island. I deployed while I was over there, and then after that deployment, I had gotten selected or voluntold to go on recruiting duty, and I was a recruiter in upstate New York, Syracuse. And after Syracuse, I went out to Hawaii, and I was stationed in Hawaii for my last enlistment.
Was recruiting duty 3 years?
36 individual deployments, as we call them. Whatever you had going on, whether you were the best recruiter in the world this month, once this month is over, back to ground zero.
Yeah. How did you like Hawaii? I've heard mixed things. Like, I either hear people say their experiences are like ignored because they're like, Hawaii's just so beautiful, or people are like, it doesn't matter how much of a paradise, they're like, it sucked.
I'm definitely on the side where I loved Hawaii. I loved it. I'm from Ohio, and between being from Ohio and then getting stationed in upstate New York, I hate the snow with everything in my being. So living in Hawaii for 3 years, where the winter season it just rains a little bit more, but beautiful place. A lot of people get it. A lot of people in Hawaii get what's called island fever, and which I mean, like you're just stuck on the island. To go and visit family, you got to book a flight and everything. It can get expensive. I loved it though. I mean, I had a great time. Honestly, like I had issues with promotions when it came to my command, but I liked the Marines that were there that I worked with. Yeah, I got no regrets about Hawaii. I requested that coming off of recruiting duty. I got it. Yeah, no regrets about Hawaii. That's something that I talk about all the time. Honestly, I would go back.
Awesome. And then you said you deployed.
Oh, so I deployed on an aircraft carrier attached to the Navy, the USS Theodore Roosevelt, and I mean that was a 10-month deployment. Yeah, if somebody offered me a free cruise right now, I would say no. Like, um, I have enough. I've got more time on the sea than a whole lot of sailors that I know personally. Yeah, I'm over the sea life.
Well, 10 months is a long time. I've heard a lot of people in the Navy who just like, I don't want to say they go crazy, but like being stuck on a boat and like not being able to get off,
Yeah.
like kind of, you get a little stir crazy there. So like I said, before we were recording, I reached out to you because I saw one of your videos on TikTok, and my FYP is like 99% veterans or active duty. And there's so much beef, right? Like there's branch beef, there's like active duty veteran beef, and then there's different generation veteran beef, like the 60-year-old think the 30-year-old aren't doing anything, and now being mid 30s, I see active duty 19-year-olds, and for every now and then I have to like crank off like the I care mode because I'll see people doing stuff and I'm like, what are you doing? But it's very rare to see like veterans who don't overreact and say like stupid vet bro stuff. And that's what I was mentioning to you. But like why do you think some veterans are just so negative and like can't just like get along?
Yeah. This is, my own personal take on that. It's just people believe that the military they served in was a harder military than what people currently serve in now. And I think that is there a little bit of truth there? Yeah, but if you peel back the layers of that onion, you're going to realize that in the military we came up in, there was more hazing that just went unchecked, you know, and you think about it, like how far does hazing get you? Like I look at it like this, right? When I was a kid, if I did something wrong, my dad whooped my ass for it. I got my ass whooped often, and I would had the type of demeanor where it's like if I got my ass whooped, I knew I wasn't going to do that again, right? And that right there might just be a generational thing because I mean I'm a parent. I believe in whooping, right? But my kids don't respond like that. I learned very early, whereas like I'm not gonna whoop my kid because my kid will literally look at me. I'll tell her, "Hey, if you do that again, you're gonna get a butt whooping." My kid will look at me and say that I will not cry. I'm like, "Is that a challenge?" Right? And you could almost put that same thing towards like military members. It's like I could do this to them. I'm physically capable of doing this to them. But what result is going to come from it? I think that we've um we've grown as like a generation. We've grown as a military organization where we just kind of understand that something like hazing doesn't mean just because you went through that doesn't mean that you are a better Marine or a better soldier or something. And I don't think that a lot of the vet bros are willing to let that go. I went through pain and suffering. They're not, so they're weaker than me, right? I think that that plays a lot into it. And it's like every Marine, I'll go off of my own experiences. Every Marine wants to think that their core was harder than the next guy's core. That's a very normal occurrence. But realistically, the way that the military has developed and grown as an institution, there's really no way. There's no way the days of the grunts going out there, they're almost gone, right? Like drones are huge now. Like, yeah, I mean, so to think that you came from a better Marine Corps or a better military because you went through something that the young guys and girls nowadays didn't necessarily have to go through. I think that's just a sign that we're moving forward as a military. So I think that's where a lot of the frustration comes from, and people aren't willing to look outside the box when it comes to that. And I try to keep an open mind. Sometimes I had somebody ask me on a TikTok video one time, do you think that hazing, is sometimes like, do you wish it was still kind of like a thing? And I honestly like to be politically correct, wanted to be like, no, of course not. Sometimes I think that, yeah, I mean, that might help a situation, but that might help like a small thing. And the issue is that people go too far with stuff like that. The best option, you just gotta cut it out. Cut it out. Hold people accountable if they're not doing something right. It is so much harder to be in whatever your work section is, right? And be extremely frustrated about what's going on and to be able to talk it out by slamming your door on somebody, hanging up the phone on somebody, checking the Marine about whatever. Why don't we just get to the root of that issue? And if you've seen some of my older TikToks, that's why the biggest beef or controversy that you'll find me in is like the whole recruiter drill instructor war, right? What's the harder special duty assignment? And I'm an advocate of recruiting is harder because I mean, as Marines, like we're used to yelling and screaming and marching and doing all the Marine stuff. That's what a drill instructor does. But if I get frustrated as a recruiter, what am I going to do? Cuss out a mom, slam the door on a kid, tell him to get out of my office? Like, no, like I have to take a deep breath, put my smile back on my face, and talk out whatever the issues are. So I think that is why a lot of the vet bro community is just like triggered with any little thing you see. It's like nobody can agree on anything. It's honestly pretty wild to see.
Yeah, every now and then I see, even when I was in, you would see an NCO that had the drill sergeant and recruiting badges. And I was like, oh, that's sick. That's an interesting point, though. I think they're both really difficult for different reasons. Like,
Mhm.
to your point, being a recruiter, you have to like switch off the military mindset because you can't be yelling at like an 18-year-old like you would a private, right? Or if they do something stupid. So you have to like talk and convince and like, sell them that they should join. Whereas a drill sergeant, you're just doing all the yelling at a heightened like aspect. But at the same point, like I know a lot of people that were ex drill sergeants, and like a little bit of that, like that drill sergeant stayed with them, right? Like the way they spoke and like, the knife hand, like it never left. And I could tell it changed them a bit, but I don't know. I know some drill sergeants and I feel like it would be exhausting to just like yell and have to put on that like robotic personality the whole time. I'd rather be a recruiter, like, because the dudes that I knew that were recruiters, like they got BH and they were living in like normal towns, right? That had like nice restaurants and stuff. Because in my experience, all the towns that I've seen around bases, not really nice, right? Not the
Right.
nicest. Like I was in Fort Sill, Lawton, Oklahoma, which if you've heard anything about it, like not a nice area. When I was a fresh private who got there were gangs,
Yeah.
right? I remember being a private and like our first sergeant had a formation and he was like, you couldn't go to certain places because there were like biker gangs who like as part of initiation might like assault soldiers. And I was like, dude, what? I was like, what is going on here? Like, this is wild. And I don't know if you remember back in 2000, like late 2010, three soldiers in Oklahoma were found dead, and like tied up and killed because they were selling like meth or heroin or something crazy to gang members. And this was in the town where I was living. And these gang members tied them up and shot them in the head. And I was like, holy shit, dude.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
was like, yo, what have I gotten myself into for like $400 a week?
Yeah, yeah, it's honestly it's crazy out there, you know. I've seen all the stories. I've heard, so many stories, all this stuff about Fort Hood and everything. And I mean, I had a Marine in my very own unit in Hawaii, right? He was a young white dude, and this guy went to some bar, right? So if you haven't been to Hawaii, like, is it a touristy area? Yeah, sure, of course. But there's places that is very territorial in Hawaii, and light complected individuals are not welcome in those areas. And I had this Marine, young little devil dog, went to some bar, and this woman accidentally knocked the drink out of his hand. And, he responded as, some inebriated person would. Yeah, what the fuck? Whatever. And real quick, like, he got surrounded by all these Hawaiian dudes, and he went to leave, and they said something and he said something back, and they pulled out a piece, and he took off running and literally got shot in the back. I laughed because it was not a fatal wound or anything like that, right? And as a young Marine who didn't want to get in trouble, he goes straight back to the barracks. He calls the Navy corpsman that also lived in the barracks, and is trying to get this Navy corpsman to pull a bullet out of him. And the corpsman's like, "No, dude, like, I need to call somebody, and like, I
Yeah.
could fix like a broken nose, but I'm not about to pull a bullet out of you." And so yeah, he ends up getting this going to medical. He didn't want to go to medical because then he would have been in trouble. And anyways, all of that happens that night. The very next morning, he shows up on time for a 24-hour duty. Like, yeah, I mean, the kid ended up not getting in trouble. I don't know if it just kind of got swept under the rug or what, but I remember sitting there as an admin guy. I'm like, dude, I'm going to have to fill out some incident report. Somebody just got shot. I don't even know what I'm supposed to do in a situation like that. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of crazy some of these areas that you could find yourself in.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that while Hawaii is beautiful and, a lot of locals are nice, that there are those places where like they don't want
Yeah,
Americans like in their area.
absolutely.
Kind of similar to like army experiences in South Korea. I don't know if Marines go to South Korea, but a lot of my boys went on rotation there. And like, for the most part, they said the older generations were super nice and respectful because like they went through it, right?
Yeah.
But like people our age there, they're like, they don't always want them still in their country. And so they'd be at bars getting hammered because I think they would give alcohol to younger ages there. So US soldiers would be getting hammered and then they'd get in fights with like South Koreans and like these huge brawls, dude. Like soldiers just getting the crap beat out of them. And I'm like, what is going on over
Yeah, it's wild. Like all of a sudden, it's like you get a young service member that's getting fed unlimited amount of alcohol, and next thing you know, there's an international incident. Like I don't know how many times I've heard we go to Okinawa a lot. I don't know how many times I've heard like the whole base of Okinawa like has gone dry, meaning you're not allowed to consume any alcohol regardless of your rank. Oh, there was X amount of alcohol related incidents. Nobody's drinking until, the base CO decides to lift that ban. Like it happens so often. I don't know. They start getting that liquid courage. You can't stop them.
One other thing I want to mention that you said in the beginning was that you've heard a lot about getting out at 12 years, right? Because it's so close to the 20. And I talked to a lot of people who've done at least 10. Seems like 10 to 15 is the normal range. And then every now and then you hear someone from like 15 to 18 who got med boarded or something.
Mhm.
And they all feel the same way. They all think the same thing. Like, when you hit that 20-year mark in like 5 years or whatever, you're going to be like, man, what if I just stayed in? And I kind of experience that now too, because my buddies who I went to basic with are like, I'm retiring in 4 years. And I'm like, damn, that would be cool to be like 39 and retired.
Yeah.
And I'm part of a lot of Facebook groups where people say, they lose purpose as a civilian and they'll comment, they're like, I'm thinking of going back in, right? It's really easy to forget why you got out.
Mhm.
And like, yeah, civilian life can be boring and like corporate sucks. But like, I vividly remember those days of being in where like, I remember standing in formation waiting for PT to start and it was cold as shit, right? Like 15 degrees with 40-mile-an-hour wind chill and first sergeant and BC are upstairs making you wait for like 40 minutes. As who knows what they're doing, right? Who
Yeah.
knows? And they come out and they're like, all right, we're running in shorts, even though it's friggin' freezing. And like, I remember those days and thinking to myself when I was 20, like, yo, they know we're out here and they know we're cold, dude, like violently shivering and they just don't care. And I remember seeing people get promoted who were complete pieces of shit, but because they ran a 11:32 mile, they were like, that's what we need, dudes who can run fast. And I remember waking up like before my alarm clock for PT and I would just like lay in bed in the dark and I'm like, yo, this sucks. So like if I'm ever like, man, that'd be so cool if I was like an E6 or an E7 or like I could have gone. I remember those times
Yeah.
where I'm like, and I have to tell myself, like, look, I did my 3 years. I didn't get in trouble. No Article 15s. The worst thing I ever had to do was write a paper because I was late and I did a shitload of push-ups. A lot of push-ups. Like people were like, oh, Justin, he's doing push-ups all the time because he's got a smart mouth. But I never lost rank.
Yeah.
And so I just try to like come back down to earth and I'm like, look, I did my time. I used my benefits. I got my degree. And you try to make the best of it. But also that reminds me, did you go back and use your GI Bill and file your claims?
I am a huge advocate of using every benefit that is available to you, right? Whether you served for 3 years, you served for 20 years, or whatever. The resources are there, and you've earned them. I truly believe that. A lot of people are just like, oh, I don't want to go through the efforts of going to school. And I'll talk to them and be like, you realize you earned that. That's something that so many people wish they had the opportunity to do. Now, I'm not a I'm not a big school guy, right? Like, personally, this is just my own belief. It's like I don't really college is very important for certain professions, right? But I think we've gotten to a time in this world where if you don't have a degree, it's almost like you're below average and less employable. So I'm just like, okay, well, I mean, I could just go to a trade school, or I could do this, or I could do that and have a valuable profession. But the military is, or the government is willing to pay me to go to school. Why would I not do that? So it's like I could have that same thought process where it's like, oh, well, I have this trade. I know how to weld, for an example. Like, people want to pay welders. Well, I could go and be a welder and still take a class or two and get paid to do that. And then, I'm obviously improving my resume while doing that as well. I'm a huge advocate of that, and personally, I will continue to go to school until I've used every single cent out of the GI Bill. And yeah, I mean, I unfortunately, right? Unfortunately, I started using tuition assistance a little bit towards within my last enlistment. So I didn't get out with an associate's, but I earned my associate's degree within a few months of getting out of the Marines. Not long after that, I had so many things from my joint service transcript that would transfer over. I damn near had enough credits to graduate with my bachelor's. I just needed to attend enough classes and hit the requirements. I got my bachelor's pretty quick, and right now I'm in my last class for my master's, and there's still money in there, so I'm going to literally just keep on taking classes until it's gone. I've used the VA home loan multiple times. I submitted, for a disability claim, and have one approved. I'm going to continue to push that until I reach the promised land. And I'm the guy that, I don't think that you or any other service member that I know needs to justify to me what sort of service connected disabilities you have. That's up to you and the government, right? I'm just the person that says, well, I can say for a fact that if I only did one enlistment, going out into the Marine Corps and putting 60, 80 pounds on my back and going on hikes and doing all these freaking pull-ups and all this stuff, that affects your body, right? Like, go and get yourself checked out, see what it is that's affecting you, and get compensated for it. Huge advocate of using every benefit that's there for you.
Yeah, GI Bill's incredible. I mean, the BAH where I went to school was 2,500, and that was like 10 years ago. So, I mean, 2,500 bucks to do 4 classes, like 2 or 3 of which, you can do on your couch.
Yeah.
Like, why would you not do it? Like, that's work. That's like working a full-time job. And I did it all the time. I did like the shortened winter class that was only like 3 weeks. I did it in the summer because, of course, the government can't just be like, oh, you get it for the whole time, even though you're not in school July or August. So I took summer classes, used the VA home loan. I want to use it again, though. I might ask you some questions about that later.
Yeah.
And then obviously disability, which is so controversial among veterans. Like, there are so many veterans I know who don't file claims because they feel like their injuries from their like lack of service aren't worth it. And then on the flip side, there's veterans who also make people who feel like shit that got med boarded at like 12 months, which I'll admit, like a year to a year and a half is a crazy amount of time to be set up for life. But injuries happen, dude. Like, I've heard of crazy shit, like somebody fell off an LMTV, snapped their back, and the army's like, well, we don't need you anymore. So then they got med boarded. And then old vet bros will be like, of course, she broke her hips and now she's out. And it's like, dude, what do you care if she's making 25, 3,800 a month? Like, do you know how much money we allocate to stupid shit? Like, And they're
Right.
still like, it's a waste of funds, or like, my buddy got both his legs blown off in Iraq and he's only at 80. And it's like, it's not this poor person's fault that the VA screwed your buddy, dude. And
Yeah.
it's never ending.
I kind of honestly, I kind of look at it just like I did when I was recruiting, right? The I might have my own perspective of what made a Marine, like, or what made the qualities of a Marine. I could look at you and be like, "No, that guy Justin doesn't have what it takes to be a Marine," right? But if you're mentally, physically, and morally qualified, who am I to tell you no? I'm nobody. My job is to put you into the Marine Corps if you're qualified, right? That's why you go and see a doctor. That's why you have like the MEPS liaison that asks you those questions. My job is to get you there, right? I'm not the guy that should be telling you no. And it's the same way with these disability claims. Who am I to have any say so on somebody else's service and what they ended up claiming? There's an entire evaluation process that you have to go through to be found service connected and to be found granted for whatever percentage of disability that you may or may not get, right? I'm nobody should have an opinion on that. Working where I work at now, I work in an office with a guy who was only in the army for 2 years and he was a reservist. And he he's got some issues. I'm not gonna put all his business out there, but I was telling him like, did you submit a VA claim? And he was like, well, no, and because of I was a reservist and this and that, and I was like, did that happen while you were working? He was like, yeah. I was like, hold on, I got a guy I need you to speak with. You fast forward that like 8 months, the dude is 70% service connected. And like, he was like, oh, Dom, like, if this gets approved, I'm going to take you out to dinner. And I was like, you don't have to spend your money on me at all, dude. Like, I'm just out here trying to let it be known that this is something that you have earned as a service member, right? I'm not the guy who gave it to you. I'm just the guy who nudged you into looking into it. So, yeah, I mean, whether somebody served, briefly or for a long time, people are going to be salty about it. Civilians that don't know anything about the process will be salty about it. But it is what it is. We are the ones who put our minds and our bodies on the line to be used at will by the government. You know, why not use what was offered to us in the very first place of enlisting?
It's wild. I don't know if you've ever done the math out, but like, there have been days where I just, whipped a calculator out and I was like, this is how much I make each month. And like, let's say average lifespan is 75, and you do the math out of all the VA over that time. And I'm like, yo, that is a lot of money. And I have a newsletter where I write about like military research that I do. And I did this article on fitness related injuries. The main talking point was, I can see my dog in the background. She's just chilling. The main talking point was, we are, I don't want to say wasting, but we are spending so much money on VA disability to to make up for hurting soldiers that I believe can be avoided if not only leadership was better, but if we took better mental and physical care of our troops while in, like, yes, running and rucking is important and all that shit, but like, don't be abusing people's bodies every week without letting muscles rest and recover. And like, your lower back's inflamed and they're like, fuck it, throw that 100-pound ruck back on. And then they get hurt. And then the military's like, well, you're useless to me now. We'll just get some fresh, 18-year-old. And then they get out and, they go and get 80%. And over the course of that person's life, the government's spending $1 million tax free, all because, your captain or first sergeant couldn't be like, hey guys, we had a real rough physical month last month. We're going to take it a little easy the next couple of weeks. Let your knees recover. Cause I tell everyone who I do, like YouTube with and my veteran buddies, like, there were times where like I went to sick call cause like my knee or ankle was swollen and there was like fluid in it. And the doctor's like, hey, don't run for 2 weeks. Right. Makes sense. They're a doctor. And then I'd go back and I'd show them the doctor's note, which, you get looked at very poorly in the military for even doing that. And my platoon sergeant would be like, okay, it says you can't run, but you can still ruck, or you can still like, flip this tire. And I'm like, dude, that's just going to mess my shit up. And like,
Yeah.
they don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely, how should I say it? I want to say, I guess, like a blurred line of, because you're going to have the Marines and you're going to have the soldiers that probably are out there malingering a little bit, right? Just trying to get out of stuff. And it's our job as leaders to make sure that we're pushing, we're getting our money's worth out of them. But we also got to understand that people sometimes they get hurt, right? Some people sometimes they need some recovery. Just because I'm in great shape and I could go out and PT every single day and do these rucks and do this and do that, that doesn't mean that corporal whoever is at that same level that I'm at, right? And people have to be able to acknowledge that, right? Because you're exactly right. If you're over exhausting a muscle group or something, we're just hurting our service members, right? Or maybe it's like verbal abuse or whatever. I don't know any of the statistics, but if I were a betting man, I would say probably the majority of the money that gets given out for these service connected disabilities probably lean towards mental health. And I mean, I don't even know if I know exactly what I would do to try to fix that. But one thing that I could say for sure is communication, right? It's like you don't have to just sit there and demean people just because you outrank them. But you say something like that on TikTok and you get called soft by the vet bros, so there's definitely like I don't know if it's a blurred line or a gray line or whatever, but there's I would assume there's a healthy medium out there, and I would definitely urge for somebody who still has the ability to affect change, take notice of that, because I doubt that two-star general whoever is looking at VA disability numbers and equating that to what they're doing while that person is still active duty and how that affects the two, right? I think it's just two completely different entities, and nobody's really done the research to try to fix that problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. And going back to the TikTok comment, like I posted a video in response to, I don't know what I said. I made some sarcastic video where I said like a lot of the time when I went to the range, I didn't even zero my weapon. Like it was zeroed enough from the last time that I just like held my breath for a split second. I got it in the grouping and I moved on. And like, was it the right thing to do? No. But like, I didn't want to sit there for 10 minutes and like, go an inch and a centimeter that way. This person commented like, tell me you didn't do anything without telling me you didn't do anything. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to treat this bully with the opposite. I'm going to be vulnerable. And I told him like, yeah, man, I didn't deploy. I didn't see combat, blah, blah, blah. But I did exactly what the Army told me to do. Like I signed up, I did the job, I got out, whatever. Um, and this person, like, of course, like somebody commented like Pogue.
Yeah, yeah.
And then this other person commented, it's always the one contract people who like can't let go of the military. And like for a split second, it bothered me. And I was like, yo, this MFer, dude, right? Like, and it's annoying. And I try not to let the vet bros get to me because like I volunteer my time at nonprofits to help veterans, right? And I made this company to help veterans like get into corporate and redo their resumes and LinkedIn's and all this stuff. And like I did a guest speaker at this veteran like conference thing on LinkedIn, and people reached out to me and they were like thank you for taking the time out of your day. This was so insightful. And that his comment really bothered me because I'm like, dude, like why do you have to be such an ass? And
Yeah.
it kind of overshadowed all the good comments I received. And I had to like stop myself. And I was like, yo, the negative people don't matter. These are just like old salty dudes. And these are the dudes who actually can't move on from their time in service, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I should focus on these positive reviews. I don't know, man. People are just so negative. It drives me nuts. It really pains me that like one of the main selling points of the military, and I'm sure as an ex recruiter, you know what I mean, like is that we're supposed to be like family, right? Like we're brothers. We look out for each other. And like while you're in, there's so much, like, it feels like there's a lot of hate. Like I could just tell, like, certain leaders just like didn't want to be there, didn't like you. And then when you get out, you think it's over with. You're like, oh, I'm away from all that toxic, that E6 who's an ass. And then
Yeah.
you get out and veterans are like even worse. They're
Yeah.
even worse, dude.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from my own experiences. And for me, like, I was in the military for the majority of my adult life, and so like if I like posting military content, it's not that the military is my whole personality or anything like that, and because I see those comments too, but I've got great respect for the military. For one, I did that for a really long time, not long enough to retire, but 12 years is still a long time, you know what I mean? Like, if I did anything for 12 years, I would talk about it in my future, right? Like, I had a dog for 12 years and he passed away. I talk about my dog all the time. My TikTok name is named after my dog. And so it's like people, these vet bros, what they want to do is they just want to compare your service to theirs. And that's all that they can think of. And what I would do as a recruiter is I would try to explain to people that a military base is much like a small city or a town, right? You've got firefighters, police officers, electricians, maintainers, you name it, legal, whatever. You've got all of those things in a base. Just because you did one deployment 3 decades ago, right? That doesn't take away from my service and what I did. We led two completely different careers, two completely different jobs, two different times, and just because you did X, Y, and Z, that doesn't mean my service was lesser than yours based off of the job that I did and the time frame of when I did it. It could be two infantrymen that served right in the heart of Iraq, Afghanistan, and one of the brand new infantrymen that never even got the opportunity to deploy, right? And it's like, does that make this infantryman any less than this one because he didn't have the opportunity to deploy? I just think that is wild. And what it kind of boils down to is somebody just trying to compare what you did to what they did, and they think that they're the better. And I just think that that's a wild take, man, because yeah, I mean, we both enlisted right around the same time, but you did something completely different from what I did. Who am I to talk? I haven't walked a mile in your shoes. I don't know anything about your career. I've seen your TikToks, and if I posted some nasty comments on your TikTok, knowing all I know about you is that 30-second clip that I seen, what kind of person does that make me? I don't get it. I don't understand why people do that, but they do it. And like you said, don't want to I don't want to minimize the good comments that I receive on some of my videos based off of one nasty negative comment. I mean, I had posted a video that, it didn't do the greatest, but I think it went off for like 40,000 views. And it was about me telling a story about requesting masks on my XO, which is, are you familiar with the request masks or no?
No.
Requesting mass is when you're demanding an audience with either your commanding officer or your commanding officer's commanding officer. You can pick the level, right? And I posted this video about requesting mass on my XO for hazing, and the hazing incident was him trying to force me to do a uniform inspection in our most difficult uniform to prepare, which is our service alphas, because he caught me with my mask lowered during the COVID time frame, and I requested mask on his ass, and I told that story, like, yeah, that is hazing because he's trying to humiliate and demean me based off of this infraction, which in my opinion was justified. Did I have my mask lowered? Absolutely, I did. But what does wearing my alphas have to do with correcting my deficiency? Nothing. That's not corrective action. You're trying to humiliate me, and that's hazing. And so I posted this video, and yeah, there was definitely some comments. You're soft, oh, the Marine Corps has changed, and this and that. But ultimately, a lot of those comments were like, this is retired Chief Warrant Officer 4 here. I'm just here to say, like, you're absolutely right, brother. And blase, blase. And my goal of posting content like that is to kind of get the message across to people that shit like that kind of happens, and whether I was right or wrong, that's up to the person to decide. But that's an option that's there for you, and my goal is not to, sit here and try to make the military seem weak or anything like that. But just because you have done something wrong to get belittled for that thing, I don't agree with it. You have options out there, and that's kind of like what a lot of my content is geared towards.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with just like wanting to be respected by your leadership. But last question for you, as someone who's pretty new to civilian world, what would you say to transitioning service members or veterans now? Like any advice? What should they do? What are things you wish you did just to help better prepare?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, there is something out there called the DoD Skill Bridge program, and you should utilize it. Now, I don't know I don't know exactly how it works for the other services, but for the Marine Corps, what the DoD Skill Bridge is essentially you getting to apply and attend an internship that lasts up to 6 months while you're still actively serving. You are doing this internship as a temporary additional duty. So you leave base, and wherever this internship is, you can partake in it, but you still get paid as an active duty service member, which that is a huge benefit. The issue that a lot of people run into is because you're in a TAD status, temporary additional duty, the command is not going to get a replacement for you. So if they say like, oh yeah, I'm going to approve Staff Sergeant me to go and do this, that means they're saying we're going to lose our admin chief for 6 months, and I'm willing to do that. So the Skill Bridge program it's developed a little bit since I got out, but if there is any way that you could do that, do it. If you're into real estate, you could do an internship with that. If you're into physical fitness, you could do it with the gym. Like there's so many options out there. Not to mention, it doesn't even have to be a DoD approved program. You can actually submit a waiver. I did that. I did the Skill Bridge program with one of the Marines that I had led way back in my first enlistment. He did one enlistment and got out, became a business owner. I interned with him, and I was like, "Hey man, can you like fill this out?" And for I was only approved for 5 months, but for 5 months, I got to come home where I planned on, getting out at. And I got to use that time where I was still being paid as an active duty service member. I was still had medical benefits and everything. And I was able to find a house. I was able to find the job that I wanted to do. I was able to settle in. And by the time that I stopped being paid, I was already set up for what my goals were when I planned on getting out. So yeah, the Skill Bridge program, if people aren't aware, I highly recommend that they familiarize themselves with that process and utilize it if they can. I think that would be my biggest thing. And then one other thing that I guess I would say is just understand that you can have a plan, but plans go awry all the time. That doesn't mean that you made the wrong decision. That just means that you need to adjust a little bit and keep moving forward. What I planned on doing when I got out, it has completely changed since me getting out. I never looked into federal service at all. Honestly, I kind of stumbled into it, and that's okay. My military career didn't go exactly as I planned on it going either. So you just got to understand that roadblocks are going to happen. That happens in the military, that happens in the civilian sector. All we can really do is keep pressing forward and reach out for help if you need it.
Yeah, and file your claims and use your GI Bill.
Yes.
Dude, I just found out that about that active duty skill bridge thing because I know about skill bridge when you're out, but I actually saw like an argument on LinkedIn. I don't know if you're big on LinkedIn.
Not really, no.
These like high up officers were like arguing about letting their soldiers do the active duty skill bridge thing. And one person, some high up officer was like, you should always let people do it. It's a great opportunity. And someone was like, yeah, but like the only time I've ever seen someone get rejected from it is if like they were like actively trying to get out of work or like they weren't a good soldier. So why reward them with this? And then someone else said something like, yeah, but then your unit's going to be down that person for X amount of time. And I was like, dude, I don't remember hearing this. Like nobody said this shit when I was in.
I think Skillbridge came around probably around 2016, if I'm not mistaken. But oh yeah, it's a controversial thing because yeah, your unit's going to be down a person, and then sometimes they want to put the commanding officer because it's an O5 level uh approving authority, which is typically for Marines. That's our lieutenant colonels and whatnot, or your squadron or battalion CO. They can approve it, but um, I was going through it when I tried to apply because I had seen like three packages come through and get approved. All three were for, well, two of them were for first enlistment people. Their work was, not to minimize what they did, but it was easily replaceable. And then I seen the sergeant major get relieved from his duty, and they just sent him on skill bridge, until he could finally get out of the service. And then here comes me. I'm trying to submit mine, and my package sits on the command deck forever. We're talking like months, and that's not normal. And before it comes back signed, the CO releases a like a publication or a policy that says like, if you want to do skill bridge, then you have to be an above average Marine. You have to have had a deployment. You have to have had X, Y, and Z and contributed to the mission. I have done all of these things. And then the last thing on there was if you're holding a billet that is considered critical, you will not be approved. And I'm like, wait. You just said the thing out loud that a lot of people were probably thinking, but you're telling me if I'm an above average performer and I'm taking these billets that nobody else is willing to do, now I can't do this. I can't do this one thing that would benefit me in my future when I've been doing all these things to benefit the Marine Corps, your command. And yeah, he put it in writing. It was actually my officer in charge. He did one of those request mass for me. And he requested mass, and that policy got rescinded, and my package got approved, which is why mine was 5 months instead of 6 months because they were kind of trying to fight that. But it's wild. And I can see it from like the commander's perspective, right? Man, you're gonna lose a lot of people, like valuable people at that. Everybody's gonna want to do skill bridge, but you can't stop the high performers from doing it just because they're high performers. What would push me to be a high performer? I could just go be a shitbag, and then I know I'm going to get approved for skill bridge. So yeah, that's a whole thing in its own, but it's a valuable program, man. Like, I mean, I did it and I was getting paid active duty, and I was stationed in Hawaii, right? Which means when I moved to Ohio to do the skill bridge, I was still receiving Hawaii BAH for 5 months. If anybody in your audience is still active duty, I highly encourage y'all to look into that one.
That's awesome. I did not know about that. They did that apparently after I got out, of course. But thank you for coming on. This was a great chat.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate it, Justin. Thanks for having me.
Also, I'm gonna put it in the description. But do you want to drop like your YouTube and your podcast and everything?
Yeah. So you guys can find me. You can find me on TikTok under username JavaBean13. And then I've got my own YouTube podcast. It's the After Actions podcast on YouTube. And you could use that same search name on TikTok where I drop like all the shorts and everything from my podcast videos. So yeah, you can search the After Actions podcast on TikTok or on YouTube and you'll be able to find me. And JavaBean13 is my main TikTok account.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on.
Hell yeah. Till next time.